Welcome to part 10 of this series. This will likely be the last entry of this series. Not necessarily, definitely not my last video ever on this topic, whether that be Serverpod or clean architecture. But we're going to wrap this up with uploading files, which Serverpod is a really nice way of handling this. So I have the docs open here of uploading files, and basically we want to start on the server side by adding a new endpoint, and actually two new endpoints to sort of get this going. So we're going to go and open up our server. So I'll just kind of close the client, close the Flutter, and we're going to go to endpoints. And we're going to call this asset endpoint, as it might, allow us to do anything to do with what we're going to call assets. I'm going to take the example endpoint and just put it here, get rid of all this stuff. And we'll call this asset endpoint. We'll try and spell it correctly. And then we can just copy these two guys right here. And also this one. And basically the way uploading works in Serverpod, it's kind of a two-step process. The first is you essentially say, hey, I want to upload a file. And we would hit this. And it's going to send back some metadata that we will then use to actually do the upload, which the upload actually, the way it works, it actually, doesn't go through our endpoints. It's depending on what backend we're using for images or files or whatever, it'll actually go and do it right from the app. So you're kind of saving, sort of some bandwidth on your server, as well as saving, processing time and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so we have these new endpoints. Let's just go and do serverpod generate. And this will just generate the client-side code for this. And we're going to do one more. Technically, this is an optional step. You can use Serverpod, sort of has its own built-in way of managing and uploading assets rather than using something like an S3. However, it's not really recommended for production use. So we're just going to kind of take this all the way and actually set it up to work with Amazon S3. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to install another package here. So right inside our server, we're going to do dart pub add. And we're going to add Serverpod Cloud Storage S3. You can do this with Google as well, Google Cloud Platform, and follow the directions for that. But we're going to use S3. And now we're just going to open up our server.dart, and we're going to throw in a little bit of extra code here. So I'm going to do this just before the pod start. I don't think the order actually matters, but what we're going to do is go pod.add cloud storage. Now we want to import what we just the package that we just installed. So I'm just going to import it here, and we're going to import it, actually do it right after auth. We're going to import it as S3 just to kind of keep a namespace so there's nothing conflicting. So here, what we need to do is we're going to use S3 cloud storage constructor. And here we need to pass in a reference to the pod itself. So we'll do that. We can give this a storage ID of public, meaning it's, these are going to be files that are publicly accessible and uploadable. We will set it to public as true. We will then select a region. Now you will need to configure your S3 bucket and everything like that, which is pretty basic to do, and there's a million tutorials on doing that. I'm just going to use the region that I set up, which is CA Central 1. And I'm actually just using a bucket from a previous Serverpod tutorial just so I don't have to go through the process of setting this up. So you might have seen this before in my full stack Dart tutorial using this exact same bucket. Now, the last thing we have to do on the server side is within our passwords file, which is in the server, server config, here it is. In passwords, which is something that's not version controlled, we need to add two keys here. So we're going to add one that is called AWS Access Key ID, like this, and one that is AWS Secret Key. Now, for obvious reasons, I'm not going to paste mine in here while I'm recording, but I'm going to essentially pause for a minute, paste my stuff in, close this file, but you'll basically want to put the strings of these two things that you get from your Amazon account. If you're using Google Cloud Platform, similar setup, just follow the instructions as provided in the Serverpod docs. All right, and while I was paused, I also just kind of created a new feature called Asset back on the Flutter side, just with some empty folders. Nothing in these yet, but figured could save a little bit of time there for everyone watching. Okay, so let's figure out how we're going to do this. So looking at the docs, basically the process is on the client side. First, we call the the endpoint for getting the upload description, basically this first one here, by passing in just a file name. And then it'll give us back some data, and we'll use that upload description to actually use this built-in file uploader that comes with Serverpod to actually go and upload it. And then we actually verify it after to make sure that it went up and everything was successful, and then we can do what we want with it. So that's kind of the flow here. Now, I want to kind of build this in a way when we're working with it that we're not thinking about all this stuff every time we want to upload a file. We just want to have one, essentially a data source. We're going to make that one function to do all this and return us back ultimately a URL of that file so that we can then use it to save it to the database. So let's get that figured out. So we'll start with the data source, and we'll just call this asset data source.dart. Okay, so we will start by, as usual, making an abstract interface called asset data source. And we're just going to have one method in here. It's going to be a future, and it's going to ultimately return a string. And we're going to call it upload image. We'll make it specific for images. In theory, we can have a separate one for files if we wanted, or we could, if we ever needed just regular files, we could kind of tweak this to make it work. And what we're going to require is something called an X file image that we're going to be adding, because we're going to be using the image picker, which reminds me we should probably install that package. So let's go to our Flutter and do Flutter pub add, and we're going to use image_picker, which is kind of the go-to image picker for basically all operating systems. So now that I have that installed, we should actually be able to upload or to import this, there we go, from our image picker. Now, when we use the image picker, at least on iOS and Android as well, we have to do some additional configuration. So I'm going to open up my plist file for iOS, and we're going to put in a couple things here. And I'm just going to make these very basic. Now, you probably won't be able to get away with this in a production app because this does get reviewed by Apple. Something a little more better, but we need a NS photo library usage description, camera usage, and microphone usage because this package uses all those. And I'm just putting for uploading photos. Again, you might have to make that a little bit better of a description for Apple to approve your app, but this will work for us because I'm not going to be submitting this to the App Store. Okay, so we now have those in there. Now, because we've installed this package and because we made a change to our plist, we actually have to do a full rebuild of our iOS app. So I'm just going to click the stop button here, and we'll go back to any of our Dart code and rebuild, basically. While that's going, we can actually still get some stuff happening here. So let's actually create our class. We'll call it Asset Data Source Implementation, IMPL for short, and it's going to implement the asset data source. Okay, now for this data source, we are going to want to pass in our client. For other data sources, we were passing in also our session manager. Client, we need to get it from the right place. However, we don't really need the session manager for this. Now, if you ever wanted to track who uploaded this file and stuff like that, you'd probably also want to have that, and you totally could, but we're not going to worry about that. So there we go, we have this. I'm actually just going to do it as a positional argument, as we've been doing everywhere else. And then we need to, of course, create our missing override here. So here we go, we'll have our code, and let's make this happen. So again, I'm going to be passing an X file, and that's basically the file that comes back from when we're doing a image picker. Say you weren't using image picker package or something else, you might need to adjust this or just use something lower level like byte data or a stream. But we're going to be just using this to keep things simple. Okay, the first thing I want to do just to deal with conflicts in image names, because you might upload a photo called photo1, .jpg, and then someone else might upload something called photo1.jpg. And if we're not doing something smart with randomizing folder names or whatever, we're going to run into issues. So we're going to solve this really easily just by essentially generating a random string for the file name. So to do that, we're actually just going to open up our core utils, make a new file called strings.dart. And if you've seen any of my videos before, I'm sure you've seen this exact same code. But we're just going to create this right here. I'm not going to type it out. I got this from Stack Overflow anyway, so it's a copy and paste. But this will basically just generate a random string for us using these input characters. So now we can actually make a random name. So we're just going to go file name is going to be equal to, and what we'll do is we'll actually get we'll use that generate random string. We'll pass in something like 16. Then we want to actually get the extension of the file. And we can just do that by going image.path and then split on the period key and then just get the last. And that will get us, in theory, that will get us the extension. Maybe not in the safest way, but this is going to totally work for us. Let's also make this async. Okay, so now that we have the name, all we need to do is we'll make something called an upload description. And here we're going to await our client dot asset, because that's the new endpoint namespace we made, dot get upload description. And here we want to just pass in this name here. So that's basically what it's going to use to create this upload description. This will become a string. However, it's a nullable string. So let's go if upload description equals null. We can do something here. Let's just do throw a server exception as we normally do. And we can just say upload not successful. And we can make that a constant. Otherwise, we can assume everything is good. So now we actually need to upload the file. So what we'll do is we'll create something called an uploader. And we'll get this uploader, or file uploader rather. And we just need to pass in the upload description to the constructor, and it will do all this lovely stuff for us. So now, essentially we want to kind of await our uploader.upload. And we're going to upload this as a stream rather than using, they have the other option. We could do upload byte data, which works totally fine. The good thing about a stream is it doesn't have to load it all into memory first and then upload it all at once. It kind of does it as a stream. So it's a little bit quicker to work with and more efficient, especially for large files. For our case of a photo, probably won't make any difference. Okay, so in order to get the stream, we actually need to take our image. So we can make something called stream, and we'll use image.openRead, and this actually returns a stream. So we have our stream. Now to get the length, we actually need to do something to our stream. So we can go length equals, and we can just do await image.read as bytes, and then get the length of that. I'm positive there is a better way to do this. Definitely in the comments, if you know how to get this without reading as bytes, totally let me know, and I'll make an amendment. Okay, so then we do the upload, and now in order to figure out if it was successful, we have to hit our other endpoint. So we do client.asset.verify upload, and we actually pass in that same name as before, and it will basically go and check to see if everything uploaded successfully. And we can do something like if not success, let's throw something else, throw a server exception, and we'll just put something like upload failed. Just have these a little bit different for us so that if we get an exception back, we know, okay, it happened here versus here. Okay, assuming it is successful, then what we're getting back, so we're getting back a string from our upload description. And it kind of is a JSON string, but it's not actually a JSON yet, or it's not a map yet. So we actually need to decode it. So we'll do final, and we'll go map. It's going to be string dynamic. And we'll just call it decoded description. And we just want to do JSON decode on that string. So we'll take our upload description, and we will decode it. Then let's just make sure, so we're looking for a specific key in here. So we can go if decoded description does not contain URL, that's really what we want here. Then we'll throw another exception, and we'll just say, no URL, no upload URL. Otherwise, we know it's good. And what we're going to return is this string here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the decoded description and get the key, the URL value there. And then we're going to put a slash after all of this. And we're actually going to then use the name of the file, like that, which I could just do this. There we go. And then we're going to return that URL. The reason I put this as a different variable is I kind of want to also print this out for our purposes. And it makes sense for me also. Let's print the upload description out too, just for debugging purposes, just so it kind of makes sense when we review this code, what's going on here. Okay, so we now have that. That's our asset data source. Done and ready to go. Let us set up our repositories now. So we have in our domain, we're going to make a new file called asset repository. And let's remember to say .dart after that, of course. And here we will make our abstract interface class, and we'll call it asset repository. And all this is going to allow is we're going to have a future. It's going to have an either. So let's import that from fp-dart. So it's either going to be a failure, as usual, or a string will come back, which will be the URL of the file. And we'll just call this upload image. And we're going to require an X file, and we'll just call it image to be passed in. There we go. So now we'll go to our repository within our data, and we'll make asset repository implementation. So let's make that asset repository implementation, and it's going to implement our asset repository like that. And we'll need to import our data source. So we'll have our asset data source, and we'll just call this data source. And we can do this nice little shortcut here to create the constructor on the final field. However, we're just going to do it as like this. And we need to get our implementation. Okay, cool. So let's make this asynchronous. And all we need to do ultimately is go final result is going to be equal to await data source dot upload image, and then pass through that image right there. Now we do, of course, want to wrap this in a try catch. And we can do on server exception, and here we can return left, pass in a failure, and then pass in our e.message. Otherwise, if everything went well, we're just going to return right our result. And I'll just get rid of these and actually import these properly, and import this properly. Cool. Okay, so our implementation's done now. Let's do our use case next. So we'll just make a, let's do upload image .dart as our use case, and we will essentially, let's just find another use case. Yeah, sure, the login one, whatever. Anything will do. So we'll just rename this to upload file, or upload image use case. We don't need our auth repository, we need our asset repository. We'll just name this asset repository. And we'll just get rid of this code here. Let's rename all the instances of this to upload image params. And the only parameter we need is an X file, which we'll just call image. This.image. Then, to essentially call this, all we need to do is go return await our asset repository dot upload image, and essentially pass through that image. And we get that image by doing params dot image. And we need to also say what comes back. Well, in a successful use case, we would be getting a string back here. Okay, we can remove a couple of things and save that. Okay, so we got through most of this stuff now. Now we get into our presentation. So let's actually create, and we'll use our shortcut here, create a new block. And we're going to call this, let's call this asset. Okay, so we have our asset block. So let's start with our asset state. And let's do similarly what we kind of done before. I'm going to rename this symbol. This is totally optional. I just really like having the word state in these things, as I've said before, just because event, state, use cases. Let's just make sure they're very verbose so we know what we're dealing with. So we have our initial state. We're also going to have a loading state. We're also going to have a success state. And when there's a success, we'll be passing back a URL here. So we'll do the URL. And love our little shortcuts here. Acquired this.url. And actually, yeah, we can just do this like we've normally been doing. Similarly, we're going to have, a failure. So let's just rename this one. Failure is actually a string, but we're going to call it message. So those are the different states we could be in, which is cool. And then for events, this will be pretty basic. The only event we really need to care about is we'll just call it final class upload, or we'll call it asset upload image event. And for this, we want to pass it an X file when we broadcast this event, which we'll call image. And that looks good to me. Okay, so we have our event. Let's get our BLoC figured out. I'm just going to remove these imports and kind of import these properly. So we'll get it from Flutter BLoC. And that means we have to go to our event and actually import immutable from foundation. Save. Okay, back on our BLoC. Yeah, anytime an asset event happens, we're going to emit our asset state loading. And we've been doing that everywhere. Nothing fancy happening there. Now, what happens when we get our upload event? Well, we'll go on upload. What do we call it? We call it asset upload image event. Yep. So whenever we get this, we'll just do something called handle upload image command dot and create a method for this. We'll make it asynchronous. And there seems to be a problem here. Let's just see. We forgot to extend. We have to extend our asset event with this. Don't forget that. Okay, so in here, yeah, this should be pretty easy. We just go final result is going to be equal to await. Now we need our use case passed in, so let's not forget about that. So we'll have our upload image use case. And we'll just call it upload image. Import. And we'll make it a required parameter. So now we can upload, or we can await our uploading image. And here we need to pass in our upload image parameters. And we'll eventually we're also going to take this from our event.image. And now we will just do our results.fold. When it fails, we will emit a asset upload failure, passing in, let's just call this failure. Failure.message. And in this case, we'll have a URL. It'll be a string, and we can actually just emit our asset upload success, passing in that URL. And let's just see if we can make this look pretty. That looks pretty good to me. All right, great. So the BLoC's done, all our data source, so all these layers are done. The only thing left is how do we actually work with this? So what I want to do in our widgets folder is we're going to make sort of like something we can essentially use throughout our app. And we'll call it upload file widget.dart. Okay, so this will be a fun little widget. We're going to make a stateless widget for this. And we're going to call this upload file widget. Now the way I want to do this is I want from the outside to be able to pass in a current URL essentially. So we'll just call that URL. And we'll also allow a label to be passed in because this might be used for uploading like a movie poster in our cases, but maybe it's also used to upload your avatar of your user or something like that. So we're going to make both of these required essentially. So we'll do required this.url. And actually, let's make our label. We'll just do this.label is going to be equal to file. Just to, if we don't pass that in, we'll just have the word file there. The other thing we need is we need a callback when we have a successful upload so that the parent using this can actually work with it and do what it needs to. So we're going to have a function which is going to return a string called URL, and we'll just call it onComplete. And that will also be a required field. So let's just put it here, required this dot on complete. Okay, so right here, now we're going to, let's just get rid of this const and let's wrap this in a BLoC consumer. Because we're going to want to update our state based on, different things, but we also might want to add some listeners, and we definitely will. So we're going to use our asset BLoC like this, and this will be asset, sorry, I did this wrong. This will be BLoC consumer still. This will be asset BLoC, and this will be asset state. Okay, so what I'm kind of thinking is we're going to have like a row. That way we can have a few different things going on here. So in the first the first entry of the row, we're actually going to have it with a column. And it will have some children, but we'll make its main access size minimum, so it doesn't try and take up all the space it can. And its children, first of all, will have just some text of the label. So whatever the label that gets passed in, we can have. And then what we can check is if the URL dot is not empty, because we are going to require a string being passed in, but we'll assume if the string is empty, there's no file right now. So if it is not empty, then we can actually do an image.network and use that URL and give it maybe just a width of like 50 and a height of 50. And let's just do fit box fit, and we'll do .contain so that we can see the whole thing and people don't get confused. Okay, so we'll have that in the first part of our row. In the second part of our row, what we'll do is we'll space these apart. So we'll have main axis alignment space between. So basically on the left, we'll have this, and on the right, we're actually going to have another row, because we're going to have multiple things in here with some children. But this one, we want to make sure the main axis size is main axis size.min, so that it doesn't try and take up as much space. And let's just put a elevated button in here. Elevated button, And what we could have here is just something that says like upload. But we can actually make this a little bit fancier. So let's say if the URL dot is empty, then we'll have the word upload. Otherwise, if there's already something there, let's make it say replace. And our onPressed event is where the magic will happen. So here, this is where we're going to actually use our image picker. And let's just see if our, does this rebuild? Yes, it did. We are good. So let's get access to our picker. And we're just using that image picker library. So we just go picker equals this, and we can go final image is going to be equal to, and we're going to await, meaning we have to make this async, of course. And we will await the picker dot pick image. And for source, you could make this fancy and let them choose between their camera or whatever, but because I'm just using the simulator, we kind of are forced to use image source.gallery because simulator doesn't support a camera. So we'll just do that. And then we want to check they might have canceled or something, so we want to say if it's not null, then we actually move forward with some things. So what we want to do is do context.read, and we specifically want to read our upload or our asset BLoC. And we go .add, and here we'll add our event, which we're going to use the asset upload image event, and pass in that image right there, because this is an X file. It's nullable at this point, but here we know it's not null. Now we are getting a warning here because we are using async with this, so we do want to wrap this in a if context.mounted, meaning if they like click this and then like left the screen really quickly, we don't actually want to fire this off because we'll have our context won't be available. Let's just kind of see what this might look like. Now, in order to do this, we do need to add this to our dependencies. So we're actually going to go right up here and right to the very top. And we're going to go and make a new call here, init asset. And with this, we will just do command dot. And we're going to create a function for init asset. I'm going to open up them side by side because we're actually going to be following, let's use the movie one kind of as a example here. So we'll go to the, where did our init asset go? There we go, it got put here. I want to put it right at the bottom. Okay, so I'm just going to copy the data source. But instead, we're going to be using the asset data source. And of course, the asset data source implementation. And this still is true because we need to pass the client in. Okay, next for repository. Let's just grab the word movie here and just go asset. And as long as we import these things, and asset data source, let's grab that. And asset repository implementation, we need to import. So now we have our implementation. We have one use case, so let's get that. And this will be the asset upload image, not event, but what was the name of our use case again? Use cases, here we go. It was called upload image use case. And this requires us to pass in our asset repository. There we go. Then we of course need to have our BLoC. So let's get that. Let's just grab one of these, and this will be a singleton. And we're going to do our asset BLoC and asset BLoC here. Oops, sorry, no, that's not right. Asset BLoC, and then what are we passing in here? Let's just double check. It is the upload image. And we pass in our upload image use case. Okay, lastly, let's not forget, go to our main.dart and copy one of these. And we want our asset BLoC. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we'll go to the movie edit page. So let's just find that, movie edit page. And let's go just underneath the text form field here. We can actually import our new file that we've made, which was called upload file widget. And what we need to do is have an onComplete event, which will take a URL, which we're not going to do anything with yet. And the URL itself, well, I guess we can pass in, let's just actually pass in an empty string for now, just to see this actually in action. Okay, I'll just do a rebuild, and we need to make sure our server is running. So Dart, see, bin. Oops, I'm not in the right spot. Let's go back to our server. Dart, bin, main.dart. Because right now, if we look at our app, it's actually saying, hey, exception, da-da-da. So let's run this. All right, so let's go here to our lovely edit page, and we now have this upload. Let's just put a bit of padding around that. Wrap with padding. We'll do symmetric padding, and we'll have maybe horizontal of probably 6 and vertical of 16. There we go. That looks pretty nice. And yeah, we could actually pass in our label to say like movie poster image or something. Movie poster image, cool. So now I'm clicking the upload button, and we're going to just allow full access, sure, and I'll just use these lovely flowers. And it looks like stuff happened. We got this, we got the verify upload. Let's look at our debug console and see what happens. So this is actually what the upload description looks like. It basically tells us the URL of it, which is like the URL of the bucket, basically, the file name, which is that randomly generated thing, some keys. So it's cool. It's actually creating like this temporary upload token, which allows our app to actually upload directly to AWS instead of it going through and proxying through our server, which is the right way to do things. And you'll see at the very end, we printed out also our image here. And actually, if I click on this and go open, this will, I just got to download this somewhere. Just the way that bucket's set up, it's kind of set to do it as, I guess, byte data or something. But if I actually click this, we actually see the image got uploaded. It's cool. It's at this URL. So everything's working from that point of view. So in order to actually get this to fully work, we need to sort of have our event, our callback be called. So I'm just going to close a bunch of things right now and just open up the edit page as well as our file upload widget. And right here in our BLoC listener, we can essentially listen for some various things to happen. So we can check if the state is asset upload, or it's like asset success, asset state success. Then what we can do is we can actually call this onComplete widget and pass in state.url. So that will fire that. Then we can do something with it right here. So that's cool. Let's get that happening. So what I want to do is actually create within our stateful widget. I'm going to do it right here. We're going to make something called string, and we're going to call it image URL. And let's just set it to blank by default. Then essentially what we could do is inside our a little more space, we could actually do a set state here and set image URL equal to URL. Then what we want to do is also make sure that this URL right here is using that image URL, so that when things change, we are good. And lastly, say we are loading one that is a retrieve event. So right here, right here, if we get the retrieve success, meaning we're loading one from, from the database, we could actually also call a set state here and set image URL equal to state.movie.url.image URL. Okay, so let's just refresh, which that button has gone away for me. There it is. Let's just move this over so I can actually see both at the same time. And we'll go here, we'll edit, and let's try uploading a movie poster. Hey, look, I already put one in here previous to starting this recording. And there we have our lovely movie poster. Now, we could probably make this look a little bit prettier just by making our cross-axis alignment at start, so it kind of is aligned there. And that looks fine to me. And now this changed to replace, so let's just try replacing it to this lovely flower photo, and we should see that this gets replaced here. Cool. I'm going to put it back to this. Now the last piece of the puzzle is we need to actually save this to the database. So simply enough, we're done with this now. What we can actually do is right now we're just creating this before we save. We're creating image URL as this. We'll just use image URL. And let's just try clicking save. And if we click edit again, we see it's in there. So we are everything seems to be working. Now we probably want to display this somewhere in the app. Our movie detail page, and we'll just keep this simple. At the bottom of this column, let's just go if movie.image URL.is not empty, then we'll actually do an image.network. And in here, we can actually just pass in movie.image URL, and let's just make its width double.infinity, so it takes up as much space as possible. And there we have it there. Our image is showing up, so that's pretty cool. If we were to edit this and change it to this flower pick and save, we see it automatically got the new one. So everything's working. I know it's not the most beautiful UI in the world, but that's beside the point. All right. And of course you could, edit this list tile to have the image in there too, et cetera, et cetera. A lot more you can do with that image, but I think we've, got the point across. So that basically wraps up this video as well as this series. Definitely let me know if you have any suggestions in the comments of some things we could have done even better here. One suggestion I have right now is spelling logline correctly right there. So we'll commit that change and everyone can get it. And yeah, let me know if there's any other topics you want me to cover, whether it's on Serverpod or clean architecture or anything about Flutter. And don't forget to subscribe so you can watch out for my next set of videos. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.